Here to help us break down the best course of action for Republicans is Joseph Pinion, a GOP strategist. So Joseph, when we look at exactly what is happening right now across the country, I want to focus on the latest example in Atlanta, because there's been unrest there for a couple of weeks now. And now we hear last night that Governor Brian Kemp is sending in the National Guard in order to calm down the situation there, kind of make sure that things get back to normal. Is this a strategy that Republicans should be utilizing going into the election year, saying that the Democrat city leaders allowed the situation to get out of control and the Republicans were forced to clean it all up?
Well, look, I think 2020 is going to be about the living and dying of America, not just what America means when you talk about things like the 4th of July, our history, but also the living and breathing of our citizens. You've got communities of color that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and now you have communities of color being disproportionately impacted by a precipitous rise in violence. In my hometown here in New York City, we've got a 27% increase in homicide just in a year over last. You're looking at an 83% increase in homicide from this point last year in a place like Chicago. So Black people are doing the dying as a result of this increase in violence from coast to coast. And if people don't understand that, if Democrats want to talk about defunding police, then they're truly out of step with the pain and suffering that everyday people are experiencing.
And, you know, even when you bring up what happened in New York just recently with all the shootings, the surge in shootings, as well as the ones in Chicago as well, it is minority populations that are greatly affected by that. They're the ones who are bearing the brunt of a lot of these policies. Defunding the police would only exacerbate that problem. I mean, we've seen it tried in Baltimore, New York, Chicago, other cities before. And the message that you lay out, I mean, it's a very convincing one, but is Republican leadership doing enough in order to convey that message to independent and maybe even some swing voters?
Well, look, I think, not to go old school, but, Malcolm X once said that sincerity is my credential. And so I think that the Republican Party needs to find ways to appear to be sincere to communities of color. There is a trust deficit there. But they all say that men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. And the fact of the matter is that here in New York City, 100% of the people who were shooting victims in the month of June were minorities. Right. When you go from city to city, the people who, again, are impacted by this irreconcilable, irrational violence that we're experiencing are minorities. And so I think that when you talk about what the message should be, we're talking about that quote from Barbara Jordan, that all the people want is simple, an America as good as its promise. Well, we cannot have that promise fulfilled without domestic tranquility. And it starts with making sure that people can feel safe in their homes, and we need law enforcement as a partner to do that.
No, and I think you're exactly right to say that. I think that it's one thing to offer opportunities, but people need to feel comfortable with the basic necessities before they even get to that point, whether it's a sustainable living, their communities being safe, things of that nature first. And then we look at things, for example, that the Trump administration has done in order to reach some minority voters, black voters in particular, whether we look at the First Step Act, HBCU support, opportunity zones. There are things there that are effective selling points for the Trump administration. How can they better reach out to voters in order to convey that message?
Well, look, I think I think the issue has to be to stay on message, right? So I think, unfortunately, I mean, for better and for worse, President Trump is a force of nature unto himself. And so when he tweets about, Bubba, he kind of gets off that message. And so I think we need to focus on the fact that before COVID-19, Black people were making more money than ever before under President Trump, that we had more Black people employed at a higher percentage than ever before underneath President Trump. And that when you talk about the actions of change, and not the symbols of yesterday the Democrats want to focus on, you can really see how everything from a First Step Act to opportunity zones lead to the betterment of Black people's lives tomorrow, instead of Democrats trying to get Black people to focus on the pain and suffering of yesterday.
No, that's an excellent point. And when you talk about, for example, the unemployment rate among Black Americans, or the idea that they're making more money, that's a type of messaging that you don't have to pay a PR firm to make. People know exactly how much money is going in their bank accounts. They know exactly how much their paychecks are. I mean, that's a messaging that speaks for itself. So I think you're right to say that if that's the argument, if that's the message they can get across, it will be effective in doing so. But Joseph Pinion, I appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down this issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.